Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from FantasyFootballScout.co.uk. My name is David and today I'm joined by a man who has made a commitment to smile a little bit more, and he's already made a start just there. It is of course Marc Jobling, who famously on Q&A yesterday became somewhat dismayed at how grumpy he felt he looked when he was resting his face. So yeah, all smiles today, Marc. Is that the new mantra for life?
It is. It's just the thinking face. It could be thinking of the nicest things, but the face was just not interested. So hopefully, um, hopefully you can consciously change that.
Well, we'll do our best today, and of course, we are talking about what every fantasy manager loves to talk about. Is of course team news. Now, unfortunately for you, team news has not really been putting a smile on many people's faces of late, because of course we have just been completely inundated with injuries, yellow flags, orange flags, every kind of citrus colour you could expect. There's a flag for it on probably most of your players, and we had people up to 4 or 5 flags in some weeks. It is, of course, the international break, so it does mean that team news is a little bit different today. Obviously, of course, I'm not Joe, you're not Neil, so we're sort of filling in for them. But there's still football happening, and there's still injuries abounding. And it's not just about the injuries, I guess. We've got a lot of things to wrap up here. There's sort of, having a look at where players are playing their games, when they're coming back. To some extent, the international break is a bit of a rest, but we do have to keep an eye on what's going on as these players take to the field for their countries, don't we, Marc?
Yes, we do. Yeah, and as we've seen already, there's been a couple of injury slash knocks pieces of news just to keep track on, especially if people are using their wild card this week. It sort of feels like every day or two there's some sort of development with some sort of player, and it's wise to keep on top of it, really.
Absolutely, and of course that's exactly where we come in, keeping an eye on what's going on. And of course we're halfway through the international break, so you're going to get more information on the games that happen over the weekend, and of course in the early part of next week in other pieces of content that we'll have both on site and in video. And Neil and Joe will be back next Friday to round up the conclusion of the international break next week in their usual team news slot. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty of the detail, another reminder, of course, to sign up for Fantasy Football Scout membership. You can save up to 30% on those preseason prices. Marc just mentioned there, a lot of you on wildcards this week. The best time to have membership is when you're on a wildcard, because you can have a look at all of these decisions in micro levels of detail. So do get yourself sorted on that. But let's jump into the first of our categories of players to keep an eye on, because as we mentioned, it's not just about injuries. And so we'll start with some non-injury related ideas, if nothing else, just to ease ourselves into this, because I know a lot of us have basically been traumatized by flags of late. We have to look largely at teams that play in the Americas, because the time zone difference and the amount of travel involved can often create scenarios where their players come back a bit late, a bit jet lag perhaps. We've seen in recent years that if it's a friendly between two of these teams from this part of the world, they quite often actually play it somewhere around Europe or maybe in the Middle East, just to ease things. However, what we've got here is we've got World Cup qualifiers, and so they obviously have to take place in South America. We've got some matches on the 18th of October at 11:30 at night, UK time. Paraguay against Bolivia, midnight. We've got Ecuador against Colombia, 1 a.m. on this day. We've got Uruguay against Brazil, 3 a.m. Peru against Argentina. There are some friendlies involving Mexico facing Germany and USA facing Ghana at 1 a.m. and 1:30 in the morning, respectively. But, that very much is annoying, really, because we've got a lot of players involved in these fixtures, haven't we, Marc?
Yes, yeah, and I suppose just like the last international break, a lot of the focus probably goes on the Liverpool pair of Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz, because last time, ahead of Gameweek 5, it was a pretty similar story in that the South American sides played pretty late, and by the time they got back, Jurgen Klopp decided not to start them for a lunchtime kickoff. And again, it's a Saturday lunchtime kickoff for Liverpool. So just when Darwin has been getting a bit of a following online over recent weeks, there's this real danger that he'll be overlooked for someone like Jota or Gakpo, probably both. We'll see if he says anything, of course, in press conferences, but there's definite logic to that. The other one we saw last time was that Pervis Estepinian didn't play in game week 5, but he's injured now anyway. So that doesn't matter.
It always seems to focus on Liverpool, doesn't it? Whenever we have these international breaks. Part of me is mildly amused about the fact that Liverpool are at the lunchtime kickoff again. It's almost like they know how much Klopp hates that. That's why they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Wildcarders especially are very much looking at Liverpool right now. I think Salah is still the favourite, but anyone who's looking to try and cover Liverpool another way, the problem you're going to have, I suppose, going into Game Week 9 is that the best coverage are going to still be in action quite late in the early hours, midweek, going into Game Week 9, which is very frustrating. We've also got a list on the screen of matches that are going to be sort of late, or rather countries that are playing games that are going to be late and involve a lot of travel, and then breaking down which players they are. And there's actually quite a large number here. Argentina have quite a few. They've got Emiliano Martinez, we've got McAllister, Enzo Fernandez, Julian Alvarez of Man City, of course, Garnacho, Montiel, Romero of Spurs, and Lo Celso also of Spurs as well. So Alvarez is another one there. A lot of people looking at going without Haaland and focusing on him. To be fair, Man City do have a bit of an injury crisis of sorts right now, so maybe he's going to be okay. But, could potentially impact his ability to work at his best in Game Week 9. Whereas Erling Haaland's Norway have some big games, of course. They've got a lot of work to do to try and qualify for the upcoming Euros. But it's going to involve significantly less travel, so if Pep had to pick one of them, which I'm not saying he would have to, I don't know. It just looks like the expected minutes is actually in Haaland's favour this week.
Yeah, you would think so. Especially with, Brighton is a pretty tough opponent, so he'll certainly want to be starting his best player, regardless of all that. But yeah, you'd back Haaland.
We've also done a video on Haaland specifically. We answered some questions on it yesterday in the Q&A. We did a bit of a deep dive into the big Norwegian yesterday on the YouTube channel, so go and have a watch of that. And also there's an article on site as well, which has got some cool additional members bits as well, so do have a look at that if that's something that's on your mind. Cameroon have got some late games. They've got Mbermo and of course Onana. They're going to be in a lot of fantasy teams still. El Neni and Salah are on this list for Egypt. Their last game's on the 16th, which is later than you like, but not as late as some of these others. But yeah, it is really Liverpool, Man City where we're perhaps going to see the biggest impact. So do go and have a look through that list in full. I'm actually not going to read this one off for the benefit of the podcast listeners because there are some parts of this where you think, why do I need to know that? So it's very much I've taken this from the article, which is not to knock it, but it's a comprehensive piece that is probably best suited to a written audience rather than you just listening to me butcher players' names. So let's move on to absentees then. So these are players where we got more of a positive spin. These are players that didn't make their international squads for reasons that appear not to be injury related, sort of. We've got another list in a minute of people who weren't included and then withdrew. But thankfully enough, there's some encouraging names on here. They're sorted by percentage owned. So we've got Ward, Prowse, Diaby, Pope, White and Porro top of this list. So whilst that last table was all about a bit worried about them, we're not so worried about these guys, are we?
No, not at all. And yes, some of those are pretty popular picks right now, the likes of Diaby and Burn and Ward Prowse. So that can only be positive news. You would think it shouldn't put their starting status in danger.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of a rest of the international break is very, very useful. I mean, the biggest one that stands out for me is probably Raheem Sterling at Chelsea because he's, done quite well recently. Chelsea's fixtures are pretty tricky, but, he's still a relatively popular player. Ward-Prowse also is another one because I'm also sort of like, why are you not in the England squad? But that's probably for a different show, to be honest. That's not our place.
There's a few England players you could... few interesting decisions made.
Yeah, well, actually, another one's Anthony Gordon. Actually, not involved.
Yeah. He's an interesting one because he's not only did he get his rest due to suspension in game week 8, but he's also got this rest during the international break. So for game week 9, he should be as fresh as it gets, really. So anyone wanting or needing that cheap midfielder to squeeze in other premiums, yeah, Gordon's a great shout. Although, in fairness, the last Newcastle against Crystal Palace, and they played each other 3 times last season, all of them 0-0. And Palace's defense is really good this time as well. So, yeah.
Well, that's good for anyone who's got Anderson, Johnston, and maybe like a Trippier or a Botman or something. So no incoming. You heard it here first. We talked about Neto versus Gordon on yesterday's Q&A. So if you want more thoughts on that, because that is a little bit of a 50-50 right now, two similarly priced players in decent form with decent-ish fixtures. So one thing we didn't mention yesterday is that, yeah, Gordon not involved in international duty. However, Neto does have 2 matches with Portugal, or at least he's been selected for Portugal and they have 2 matches. They're in fantastic form in their qualification group though, so they may not actually need him. So do keep an eye on that. But yeah, that's just another. There's so many caveats to Neto versus Gordon, and we managed to somehow find another one. So there we are. We've done that. Let's move on to players who have withdrawn from their squads now, and some notable names here. Not least Bukayo Saka of Arsenal. This muscle injury that. I was saying it. I was like, you keep bringing him on and you keep trying to get him through into games with no training. Like, eventually, you're going to have to actually get him missing games. You should have just done this already, Mikel. That seems to be where this is going.
Well, there was all the memes going around of all the situations where Arteta would still play Saka no matter what. So it was a nice surprise, and it was the right decision from Arteta to, and they won, of course, anyway. So it paid off perfectly. But to have 2 games in a row have him have injury concerns, I think that's what done it. But not starting him against City was sensible, and withdrawn from the England squad is also sensible. So hopefully you would think the worst of that should be over. You would hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And the fixtures are tricky enough this week that I think it's really game week 10 that a lot of people who sold Saka are looking to bring him back for, and then it gives us just a little bit more time to get an understanding of what his situation is, because if it's a hamstring injury, I mean, they're not quick turnarounds by any sense. So yeah, we need to keep an eye on that. Saliba has pulled out of the France squad with a toe problem. I've seen certain indications that maybe this is some slightly better injury management from Arteta, because Arsenal really need their centre-backs fit at the moment, don't they? In good form as well. So, I mean, every reason to want to sort of withhold him. Not that I'm necessarily accusing Arteta of trying to subvert the international call-up process, but this one's a bit different. I feel like he's been okay. And if you've got Saliba, you'd be probably happy to see him miss the international break with an injury.
Yeah, and the initial reports, just looking around online, seem to be fairly positive, quite a precautionary thing. So right now you would say it's not really a concern, but that could always change. But yeah, it should be all right.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing we want to hear. I think the only other one probably on this list who really stands out is Matoma for Brighton. He has pulled out of the Japan squad with fatigue, which I don't know if that's like the footballer's way of saying he can't be bothered. I know fatigue is a real issue for some people. I'm not knocking. I do appreciate that, but when it's a football player, like, mate, come on.
Well, it's very nice of Japan to sort of agree to that, really, because you would have thought if you were the nation there, you'd be furious at that reason. But to actually agree with it, yeah, he is getting a lot of. I saw a quote earlier where the Zerbi once said that he would never take Matoma off. I know we've seen him benched at the start, but yeah, he is getting a lot of minutes at Brighton, and I think he's possibly their most. Don't quote me on that, but has he not played the most minutes out of all of them this season? So, yeah, he's fatigued.
I should just clarify. I can appreciate that football players can get fatigued. I don't want to fall into the trap of people thinking I'm one of these people that thinks we can just flog football players with an inch of their life. I'm louder than most people when I turn around and say we treat these football players like cattle at times. But I'm just surprised to see it flag up as a specific reason for pulling out of an international squad. Just thought I'd clarify.
Yeah, at least have the creativity to make up an injury.
Yeah, he could easily turn around and say he's got a toe problem, or invent some kind of virus illness. Yeah, he threw up last night. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. What did he throw up? He threw up goals.
You can't disprove that. So
exactly. That would have made more sense. So what we're basically saying is just become more creative when you're trying to subvert the process, guys. That's what we want to see. Let's finish then with the injury updates that we have received during the international break. And we have to absolutely start with Andrew Robertson, Scotland, Liverpool's Andrew Robertson. Not very nice scenes for either club or country here. This shoulder injury that he's sustained in, interestingly enough, Scotland's first defeat of the qualification campaign. Difficult time, just when they were very close to qualifying. Yeah, this could be quite serious, is what I'm hearing. What have you seen in the reports?
Yeah, it's he was seen leaving the pitch with his arm in sort of a temporary sling, and I guess just from the body language of certain people around that, it sounds maybe more bad than good. But there's definitely been talk of bringing in Simicast, FPL managers straight away. Jump into that mindset. 4.4 million Simicast. But yeah, so the injury on Robertson, we need to hear more about it. But the scenes at the time didn't look that great.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about FPL managers. We're sort of like vultures sniffing around a corpse. It's like he's not even cold yet, and we're already like, right, who's coming in for him then? Oh, he's 4.4. Get in my team, son. Like, that is very much what it was on Twitter yesterday, that's for sure. And I have to just also say that was also Fantasy Football Scout's approach on social media as well. So don't worry, we're all part of that disgusting process with you. We'll start with Robertson first. And then we'll come into Simicast in more detail in a second. You're right, the body language of the other players is perhaps what is the indication here. We have to sort of speculate, I guess, because we've not had a specific injury update from the time of recording anyway. If it was merely a dislocation, correct me if I am wrong, but in the past, when you get a dislocated, shoulder, in the past I've seen them maybe force a player to get substituted, but it doesn't normally set them back a long way, and the physios and the players around them kind of know that. And I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. Feel free to insult me in the comments if you need to. But yeah, I don't know. I just I'm surprised that the reaction was the way that it was, because when I saw shoulder injury, I assumed dislocation. Yeah, that's kind of what my thinking was there. I don't know if you share that. Can you offer a second medical opinion, Mark?
I could make something up, but I really don't know. I'm not a doctor in any sort of way, but yeah, I guess in the old days you just click it back in, wouldn't you? So
yeah. What we really need is the 1970s to come back, just get it back in and be like, yeah, he's fine.
The magic sponge and the click back in, that sort of fixed everything. So yeah, I always get a bit of a shudder when I see the dislocation click back in.
My apologies if I sort of was forcing you down memory lane in a disgusting way just now.
No. I was once in hospital because a friend on rollerblades accidentally hit my head with a shovel.
Accidentally?
Yeah, it was a very strange situation, but the back of the skull is a bit misshaped because he was on his he was started this now.
Well, we have to finish it.
It was just before Christmas. He was on his rollerblades, as you do. He had a shovel in his hand, obviously, and he sort of did not see a small step coming, so he lost his balance, needed somewhere to put it.
Right.
And obviously my head was...
The most convenient location at the time. I'll put it there.
Yeah, so that was bleeding a lot and all that lot. So that's the one that sends shudders, not so much the dislocation, but...
Wow.
Yeah, bringing it back to Robertson there.
Incredible. Wow, that's... What was the prognosis? We're not going to relive your trauma if you don't want to, but I imagine you probably were yellow flagged for the next match in the playground.
Yeah, a little bit. Sort of had a bandage around the head and the eye.
The Terry Butcher.
Yeah, and what's his name? Pudsey Bear.
Pudsey Bear.
Bit of that as well.
Nice. It's Terry Butcher meets Pudsey Bear. I've never heard you described that way, but I think from now on we have to. But yes.
Sorry to take it off track there.
Mate, it's the international break. That's what the international break is for. I'm surprised that we're not doing a World Cup of injuries, or I don't know. What's your favourite weather, So arguably that was more entertaining than both of those. But yes, Robertson, go and have a look at what the experts say. Don't listen to me. And someone once hit Mark very hard in the head, so who knows what we can trust when he talks. So
Exactly.
yeah, let's move on to stuff we do know about, which is the opportunity for Simicast. So let's pretend that we live in a world where Robertson is out long term. He does look quite good, doesn't he? 4.4 million, good fixtures, and plays not unlike Robertson when he's on the pitch.
Yeah, he's coming in at like over £2 million cheaper than him, and they've got Everton at home, Forest at home, then Luton away. So that's pretty solid. Liverpool's defense as a team hasn't been particularly convincing, often going 1-0 behind. So they've only got one clean sheet. I think a couple of their underlying stats aren't particularly positive, but looking forward rather than behind, you would like to think there's at least one clean sheet there. Plus, as you say, he's quite attack minded. So for 4.4 million, there's real potential there if we hear that Robertson is out for a month or so, or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably the best case scenario is to use him for maybe one or two of these. I've always said that the way that the Liverpool defence has operated in the last 18 months to 2 years, it would be really beneficial if one of their players was at a rotatable price, because in a world where Alexander-Arnold and we have to say Robertson haven't been as forthcoming in the attacking returns as we once saw back in their Halcyon days, you look at the Liverpool defence and think, okay, that can probably keep a clean sheet away at Luton, maybe at home to Forest, but at home to an Everton team that seems largely resurgent and probably goes to Anfield with a point to prove in Gameweek 9, and at home against a Brentford team that is very good at surprising top six sides, you probably wouldn't want to start your Liverpool defender. And so a 4.4 million one is perfect. It's perfect price for you to just swap him in and out with what else you've got going on. And then, yeah, but certainly we should just obviously, of course, caveat this with, if it looks like Robertson's only out for like 2 to 3 weeks, well, he's already going to save one of those weeks on the second half of the international break. So yeah, be careful. Don't land yourself in a situation where 3 games into potentially your wild card, you've got a Simicast who's not playing and you have to waste a transfer selling someone like him. So yeah, an opportunity for sure, but yeah, one that you need to sort of be careful with. The other thing that we've had overnight, and it sounds like we don't need to worry, but Cole Palmer came off whilst involved with England under-21s. Done a video on him this week because there's a lot of people having a look at him. He's done very well in his last 2 starts for Chelsea. But yeah, forced off yesterday, but sounds like we don't need to be as worried as we first feared.
No, it's been described by Lee Carsley as a dead leg. So
yeah,
in that respect, especially with over a week to go, it's nothing really. Another one that came up, I don't know if you were coming to it anyway, but Alexander Isak.
Ah, yes. I don't have anything on the slides, but yes, I saw that just as we were about to start recording.
So Sweden withdrew him because of a groin issue. I don't think there's much more on the severity of it yet. So until we get more information, we can't really say. He scored 6 goals and he could just potentially have been coming back onto the radar, but then this potential setback sort of undoes that. So I'll be very curious to see what the Isak situation is. Callum Wilson is back from his, because he came on against West Ham. So if there was one Newcastle striker that was absent and it made the other one nailed on, that would suddenly be very, very appealing. But right now, each other's existence is the problem.
Yeah. I mean, arguably, we've done it again, Oh, he's injured. Oh, he's not even cold, and we're already thinking about who's going to play in front instead of him. Because I agree completely. If anything, I'd be more excited about an injury to one of those two than to Robertson, because yeah, Newcastle's fixtures continue to be good. You're a team full of goals as well. I want to be able to have someone from that team. And yeah, it's sort of running out of room in midfield. I know that people are sort of switching to 3-4-3, but I've certainly got a lot more openings up front. And Callum Wilson, when he's starting games regularly, he is a powerful force in FPL. So yeah, another one certainly to keep an eye on. I think we've managed to round up just about everything from the international break as it currently stands, unless I've missed something glaring, which I'll just double check with Marc on.
I
You can
don't
say
think
no.
so. No, I don't think there's much interest in Tonali or Zaniolo and their sort of withdrawals due to non-footballing reasons. I don't think there's much FPL interest in those two. So yeah, that seems to be most of them.
Nice. Yeah, well, as we said, we are sort of at the halfway stage of the international break in many ways. Well, at least chronologically anyway, because in a week's time it will be done and we'll be back into the usual run of the mill things. Of course, that will include a team news video from Joe and Neil, which will include a lot more medical knowledge than we've been able to provide today. Mostly because they will have heard from all of the managers who will be able to talk a lot more accurately about all of their players. So if you haven't already sort of bookmarked that as something you watch like every Friday at 3 o'clock, then do sort yourself out with some bell notifications so that you don't miss that. There's not going to be much going on in the office on 3 o'clock on a Friday. Let's be honest. It's as important as listening to them. So do check that out. And we've got plenty of other content over the international break. We're doing some deep dives into Pedro Neto, Erling Haaland, Cole Palmer, all of the people that are involved in some of the transfer decisions. And from Monday onwards, we'll be back into the usual flow with your burning questions, your scoutcasts, your deadline dilemmas, and Q&As with Az and Sam, instead of some guy who's pretending to be a doctor and a guy who got hit really hard in the head with a shovel once. So, yeah, next week is... It's going to be good fun. Are you looking forward to things going back to normal next week, Mark, or do you still need a few extra days of international break recovery?
I do sort of cherish the international breaks, absolutely, but there's also a part of me that likes routine, as sad as that sounds. So it's I'm happy either way.
See, you can see Mark's turned a new leaf. He's trying to be as happy as he possibly can. So that's good to hear. And that's the latest update from him. Well, with that, we shall leave you fine folks to enjoy the rest of the international break, and we shall see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.